In August 2022, local education charity Success for All was over the moon to receive a grant from the National Heritage Lottery Fund to allow them to take some young people on a journey to find out more about Northeast history, and specifically one of its biggest natural landmarks, the River Tyne. And so, our adventure, Reflections on the Tyne, began almost 2 years ago. Since then, our group has come together at least once a week at the Carnegie Building in Benwell to explore what heritage means, learn more about the history of the Northeast and the River Tyne, including the role that migrant people have played, and also consider what the future might hold. We went on so many trips, which saw us visiting different cultural, historical, and natural landmarks, and also finding out more about the environmental legacy of the area. We thought about what Newcastle was like before and during the Roman period, right through to the industrial age when coal was king, as well as the early 20th century when shipbuilding reigned. We made art and held our own art exhibition on the historic Quayside. We collected glass on Seaham Beach, carried out biological and chemical testing of bodies of water, as well as biodiversity surveys. We went bird watching, toured Newcastle Keep by night, the Victoria Tunnel by day. We walked under and over the 7 main bridges that cross the Tyne, and even kayaked along a stretch of the river. On our journey, we also worked with some wonderful individuals and organizations, such as Mark from Akio Soup, the Tyne Rivers Trust, Northumberland Wildlife Trust, and the Live Theatre. Not only did we have a lot of fun, but we deepened our knowledge of and connection to the region and the river. Our curiosity grew to find out about the connections that others had with the river. So, we asked, and some generous people were kind enough to give up their time to share their thoughts and stories with us.
Whereabouts it came from on the map. Okay, cool? Yeah, cool. Fine.
You shall have a fishy on a little dishy. You shall have a fishy when the boat comes in. And dance to your daddy, sing to your mommy.
So, can you tell us about yourself and your name, please?
Yes, well, we are from the family Thompson. We are brothers. We have got 6 sons and 1 daughter in our family, and my name is Jim Thompson.
I'm Brian Thompson, Jim's brother. And our family's been associated with the river. It's always we can remember.
Tell us, how are you connected to the Tyne River?
Well, I was born within sight of the river, and so we and our family started on the riverside, underneath the old Redgeoff Bridge, in a place called Pipewell Gate or thereabouts, on an area that's called the Bankies or the Rabbit Banks, on the Gateshead side. So we are Gatesheadites, although we are speaking in Newcastle. But Brian wants to.
Yeah, the actual house is where our family originated from. It was a railway house, and actually the address was 2 Redgeoff signs. That's where Gateshead's first railway station was.
That's interesting. And since you guys grew up around the river, how has the river changed since you were born?
Changed. Oh, it's changed tremendous. I mean, the river's dead to what it was. I mean, at that time it was booming. I started work in Walker Naval Yard in 1953, and at the time they were making City York, City Durban, City boats, cargo, dry cargo and passenger. And there was a boat in there called the Maori. It was a Maori, it was a ferry boat that sailed from the Tynes in New Zealand, and Princess Margaret came up to launch it in 1953. But since then, the river's just been declined since then, actually.
And even our brother, he was born on the Tyne, and he had victories in the rowing competitions that we had on the Tyne those days, you know. So that was tremendous triumph days, if you like. And then he got me my job, and he was very, and as we like to be honest, he says, you will not like it, you know. He says, but don't give up, get in. When you're in, you can change your trade. So I changed it from a caulker to a welder, and then I had problems with my eyes, and then I changed my trade again to a shipwright. You know, one particular day there was an ambulance running down the hill across the river at a place called Hawthorne Leslie's Yard, and you say, whoa, that's sad, you know, somebody's had an accident 5 minutes before the buzzer goes at 4:25, you know. But our brother, who was a very loving man, and I saw him the night before and said, see you tomorrow, Hughie, you know, it was him.
Oh.
When we got home, he had an accident and overcome with fumes and fell. You know, when Brian took part in building those ferries, or that ferry, and I took part in building Atlantic boats, which were container ships. And they had to be really accurate to get these containers in, you know. And one of the boats that we built, we were entitled to call them boats because we're, you know, working on the ships, we call them boats. And one was the Atlantic Conveyor. So you spent 4 years on this thing, making it or whatever, you see. And then, of course, it was prepared for war. It took supplies and aeroplanes down to Falklands with all the supplies for the lads to go to war, and then it got hit by a missile, didn't it? You know, and the thing burned up, which I'll show you the photographs later. But and that breaks your heart because I've just spent that much time on that thing.
But you spent a lot of time on it.
Yes, you know, know every inch of it, you know, building panels and making superstructures and making sure that everything's watertight and fit for purpose, etc., you know. And so it's a costly thing, giving yourself to something, but it's something that's vital. That was one of my stories. My friend, he was 40 and hired a boat, a ferry, you know. So you come up the river where the blinking eye is now, and the man blew his horn on the boat, and they open the bridge. And then we come back, and then up beside the estates and such. We'll come round, and then we'll come back. And I distinctly remember that because I brought this little thing here, and it's called a shofar. Now, this, when the Jews were forced out of Russia, they came to the Tyne. Really? And then, yes, and then we moved across to Gateshead. So if you mention the word Gateshead anywhere in the world, everybody knows it's a centre of learning for the Jewish folk, you see. And this is what they play in their celebration days, you know.
Yes.
So what happened was, we came to the bridge, the man on the ferry blew the horn, and then I said to this guy, I just want to, because we had no money, you know, but I wanted to give my friend a present. I thought, well, I'll give him some noise. So I blew this, and after I blew that, there was somebody going across the Tyne Bridge on his way to the football match with one of those air horns you use at the match, and he went bop, and each one was a third higher than the other. What a magnificent moment. So he went bop, and I went, and then he went bop, and everybody on the Tyne went, what's happening here?
Close the bridge.
Yeah. So, you know, there's trauma and trouble in life, but there's fun too. You have the whole thing, you know, on the banks of the Tyne, and that's you know where we've got our security, our history, our experience, you know, and it's good. When I went to Blaydon Races was on the 9th of June 1862 on a summer's afternoon. We caught the bus from Bamborough, she was heavy laden. Away we went along Colmwood Street, that's on the road to Blaydon. Oh, me lad, you should have seen us coming, passing the folks along the road just as they were standing. All the lads and lasses there, all with smiling faces, gunning along the Scotchwood Road to see the Blaydon Races. With Blue Post Armstrong's factory and along to the Robin Adair, just gone and doing to the railway bridge, the bus wheel flew off there. The lasses lost their crinolines and the veils had hid their faces. I got 2 black eyes and a broken nose, just gone into Blaydon Races. Oh, me lads, you should have seen us scanning, passing the folks along the road just as they were standing. All the lads and lasses there, all with smiling faces, coming along the Scotchwood Road to see the Blaydon Races.
And dance to your daddy, sing to your mommy, dance to your daddy, to your...
I'm Alan Oliver, and this is my son.
I'm Mark Oliver, and this is my son.
I'm Samson Oliver.
My grandmother's family were butchers, and they had a butcher's shop on the Quayside, and so they used to sell meat to the ships when they were in restocking their kitchens and things like that. They were building ships for the war, which was in the 1930s and 40s.
That's nice.
And 20s, 1920s, so 100 years ago now. And my father was born in Rosyth, where there was a shipyard. He went to school in Portsmouth, where there was a shipyard, and he went to college in Newcastle, which was back home from the shipyard, because his father, my grandfather, went where the work was. They had to, and that was building ships.
Do you want to tell that story of your first memory?
It's my earliest memory. When I was 5-year-old, my granddad said to me, "Me brother, I want to show you something." And at that time we lived at Lobley Hill, and we walked to the swing bridge from Lobley Hill because my granddad didn't like buses. And when we got there, they were just shutting the gate. Because there used to be like an old wooden farm gate that closed the road. When the bridge, the swing bridge had to swing to let the big rivers up the river.
Yeah.
And we sat on this gate, and my granddad said, this ship, which was going past, it was massive. He said, "I helped to build that." And that's my earliest memory. And it reminds me of my granddad whenever I tell it, who has obviously been dead for a lot of years now, about 60, I think. So I find it very emotional. Yeah. The other thing that I remember about my granddad was, as the years went by, they stopped building ships with wood, and they began making them with metal. So he retrained as a riveter, and he used to work still as a shipwright, but instead of making wood, he worked on the rivets, which were just hammers really, hot rivets. They used to heat them up. Somebody would hold a pair of pincers and he would drill the rivet in from one end. And so he worked in the erection of what we used to call the new bridge, the Tyne bridge. And he worked with that. helped to build the Tyne Bridge when he was quite a bit older.
Me having my dad and being brought up to kind of be a proud Geordie and to celebrate the river and things like that, I've always just been fascinated by the Tyne. And then just before I turned 40, I ran a marathon. I always said I would run a marathon before I was 40. So on the last day, literally the day before I turned 40, I left it last minute. I ran a marathon and I started at my house, which is in Rowlandskill, which is on the Derwent, which flows into the Tyne. And me and my best friend ran from Rowlandskill down to Swalwell, where the Derwent meets the Tyne, and then along to Wylam, over the Wylam Bridge, and then all the way back along, past Wylam, past this part of the town, the West End, Scotswood, all the way along, over the Millennium Bridge, and then back along to Swalwell on the other side. And that was 26.2 miles. That was my marathon. We called it the Two Rivers Marathon because it was my two favourite rivers, the Derwent and the Tyne. I see the river every week. I go to church in Newcastle, and a group of guys who go to the same church, we all pray together on the River Tyne at 6 o'clock in the morning every Tuesday. There's like 6 or 7 guys from my church, and we've obviously got faith, and we pray over the city, and we thought that was a really kind of iconic place to do it, right in front of what is now the Hard Rock Cafe, which used to be called the Guildhall, just next to the Swing Bridge. So we just pray over Newcastle and Gateshead, and yeah. So I see it every week, and I run along the river as often as I can.
Well, I see it 6 days a week, because my school is in Blaydon, and it completely overlooks the Tyne, and you can see a lot of things from it. It's a good view, and then obviously I go to church on Sunday mornings, and we go across into Newcastle. I always used to I haven't the past 2 years, but I used to do Harriers on a Tuesday and Thursday, and it would rotate on a Tuesday from running on the track, and the Thursday running along the Tyne and doing a nice loop there. And then I did individual runs with my parents across the Tyne as well. So that's my connection. Obviously, hopefully expands soon, but not as old as these two.
I've got one more story.
Okay.
About our connection with the butchers that my grandmother's family. They had a butcher's shop on the south side in Gateshead on Ellison Street, but they used to supply ships with decent quantities of salted beef for their trips, and what they also did was that the local people who wanted meat and couldn't afford it used to work like I don't know what you would call it, but they couldn't pay. They didn't have the money, so they would give them something that was valuable, and they would still supply the meat, so they wouldn't go without meat. We have a clock on our wall, which was a ship's clock, big brass round clock, and that came through the butchers because somebody paid for their meat with the clock, and they never came back to claim the clock. So that's been passed down to me.
You want that? I'll be getting it first.
Mommy say, dance to your daddy, sing to your mommy, dance to your daddy, to your...
Chris.
Okay.
Yeah, strangely on both sides of my family, my mother's, because I'm from North Lincolnshire, I'm not from round here, as you can tell by the accent. First of all, my grandfather, William White, Thames, got to find a job somewhere else. So he was a boiler maker, and this was a highly skilled job at the time because everything needed boilers. Locomotives, factories, everything depended on steam. So a boiler maker was a really highly skilled, important job. And he came up to the Tyne looking for work and got a job in Redhead Shipyards in South Shields. And he had 5 sons, I think, and at least 3 or 4 of them were also involved in shipbuilding. And one son got married and went off to Birkenhead, and he was a shipbuilder in Birkenhead. Another one went to Sunderland, and he was I met him, he was a welder and riveter, and he only had one eye because of the welding and everything without goggles in those days. He was called Matty, and he had another son who was called Paddy, and Paddy had 17 children, and he was a seaman, and he used to go off to sea, leave his wife pregnant and come back. And so I think my grandfather, William White, must have been Irish to have a son called Paddy. And during the war, Paddy was sunk twice. He sailed from the Tyne, and he was sunk twice by German submarines, but he survived. Two of my great uncles, William White's sons, were in the Battle of Jutland on the first ship to be sunk, the Indefatigable. This was a disaster, the Battle of Jutland. We fought the German Navy in 1916. And the Admiral said, keep all the fire doors open on the ships so as we can get the ammunition passed through the ships much faster. Admiral's name was Beatty. And they did this, but as soon as a shell struck the ship, a flash went through the ship, ignited the magazine where they kept all the shells. Ships blew up. And Beatty said, I think there's something wrong with our ships today because all the ships were blowing up. Anyway, 2 sons were lost at the Battle of Jutland in the First World War. My grandmother, his wife, of course, she lived at South Shields, and my father, he went into the same trade to be an apprentice boilermaker with his father. But when he was about 16 or 17, you get to that age where you think you know things better than the adults, and he could get more money as a miner. So he left his apprenticeship and went down the coal mines in South Shields and regretted it greatly afterwards, because if he'd have finished his apprenticeship he would have earned 3 or 4 times as much money. That's my father's side of the time. Yeah, I think I've mentioned everything. My grandfather, William White, fell off on my mother's side. Her father's father was a teacher in a little village called Dodworth near Barnsley, but he couldn't teach music, so he got the sack when he was about 24 years old. But his father, my great-great-grandfather, was a toll bridge keeper. To cross a bridge in those days you had to pay a toll, some money, and he had connections, and they just opened a brand new bridge in Newcastle, which was one of the wonders of the world. Nobody's seen a bridge like this before. It had a road underneath and a railway on top, and it was called a high level bridge. So he got him a job collecting tolls on the high level bridge, this new bridge. And his wife, who was also his cousin, which was quite usual at those days, was pregnant with my grandfather. But my great-grandfather, collecting the tolls, had to go out in all kinds of weathers, and he got pneumonia, and he died aged 25. And when I walk across the high-level bridge, as I often do, his ghost walks with me, but when I'm on my bike, his ghost can't keep up. So he had 2 brothers, and they emigrated to Pittsburgh and became millionaires in the Pittsburgh steel industry. So, pity we lost connection with them. And I was stupid when I was 21. I was in Pittsburgh and I had a chance to look up one of his daughters. He had 5 daughters, the brother, and I didn't have enough time. I should have made the time, and I've regretted it ever since. You know, because maybe some money might have been passed down our way. What's connection to the River Tyne? In 1967, I was in the holidays. I was at school like you guys, and I had a summer holiday job building the Tyne tunnel. And I worked mainly at Jarrow on the ventilation shaft, you know, the big white chimney thing. To get there's a big fan there, and if the fans broke, they would have to close the tunnel because the fans take the air through the tunnel. Otherwise, everybody would die from carbon monoxide poisoning. And that's where I worked. And one day I had to push a wheelbarrow right the way through the Tyne tunnel. And when I got to the other end, my arms were nearly dropping off. It's a hell of a way when you're pushing a wheelbarrow. Soon after the tunnel had been built, it started leaking. And water started coming through the roof. So what they did, they got ships in the Tyne with loads of bags of cement, and they bombed the leak. So there's like a mountain of cement above the leak now, bags of cement, and they kept bombing the leak until the leak stopped, and that was that. Highly technical engineering.
You shall have a fishy on a little dishy. You shall have a fishy when the boat comes in.
Well, my connection to the Tyne is that I live in Newcastle, so I'm a Geordie, so I've always lived near the Tyne. It's my river. It's a place that I've always enjoyed going to, but my connection with the Tyne came to life with my involvement in the tall ships race in 1993. It's amazing we didn't win, no. So there was a big long build up to the race. I remember my dad used to read the Evening Chronicle newspaper, and he found a cutting about the tall ships race, and it was probably 2 years before the race happened, and it was an organisation looking for young people who wanted to go on a sail training adventure, and I was like, yes, that is me. And we spent a whole year preparing for the race. We built up our sort of feeling of being in a crew, and we raised lots of money. We had to raise, I think it was nearly £1,000. It felt like that sort of amount of money. The race came up in July in 1993, and I just felt so proud having gone through that year. We'd done lots of hard challenges. We had 2 ships, the Malcolm Miller and the Sir Winston Churchill. And I was on the Sir Winston Churchill ship. And 49 of us were on each ship. The race started at the mouth of the Tyne, so where the 2 piers came. And then once you're in the race, you're not allowed any motors at all. So if the wind stops, you stop. And if it's very gusty, you go with the wind. As we went down the Tyne with crowds everywhere on the quayside cheering for us, and other ships, and you know, ships ringing their bells and ships honking their horns. And I just really felt that it was one of my most proudest moments of, you know, wow, this is my city and I've been chosen to do this. That every time I go down to the Tyne now with my children, there are certain glimpses of it that I'll see that will just take me back to that wonderful experience. A connection to the Tyne with my family. So my dad's first job was working in the shipyards in Wallsend along the Tyne. So he would kind of work with the metal that brought the boilers together inside of the ships, and then eventually joined British Telecom. But I remember it must have been the late 70s or early 80s, my dad took us down to the shipyards where one of the big ships was being launched, and I think it was called the Ark Royal, but I might be getting that wrong. and we got to see it launched, and we were stirred with everybody else in the cold and wet, and waiting, this sort of really nervous tension, all of the people who'd been involved. And then I guess it was like someone like the Queen, you know, smashed the champagne on the ship, and then nothing happened, and there was just this couple of seconds of silence, and then a big crack, and then the sound of these chains rattling, rumbling and rumbling, and lots of noise, and then still nothing happened. And then slowly this ship, getting faster and faster, slipped down the sidings and into the water with a massive crash, which was drowned out by the cheers of all the people watching. A real moment, again, a moment of pride about the Tyne, that all of these people had worked to see their ship out launched into the Tyne. I think it's natural that things evolve. But yes, it was amazing to be part of that and to experience that. But we've got lots of bridges, so I think the Tyne and the bridges are important together. And there's obviously the lovely folk song about the woman who can't get to her lover across the Tyne. But I think it's a real gathering place. It's a real, you know, people talk about going out to the greenery. Well, it's like the bluery, really. I think it's a place of pride because it shows that Newcastle and Gateshead were a port. You know, people brought goods in and we interacted and traded with the world. And to me, it's just important. You know, we would go to Tyne Mouth and play on the beach right in the Tyne Mouth area and play in the Tyne there. But the Tyne in Newcastle was run down and not the sort of place that it felt safe. And when I went on the tall ships race, it was just starting to change. So it feels now like it's a really important part of the town. It feels like it's a really vibrant place to me. But the river's got it all, and you can really people watch. And it's a lovely place. Well, I've lived here, and then I went away for university and lived in Scotland, and then I lived in Singapore for a little while. But I always wanted to come back to the northeast. And my husband moved here when we started dating, and then my family have grown up here, and I'm just really proud to be living in the northeast. We've got everything. We've got everything we need here, and I love the people of the northeast.
What's our connection with the Tyne? So, we've got a really precious story about the Tyne, and it is the place that we had our first kiss. So when we first met,
on a blind date.
Yeah, on a blind date, we had dinner, and we decided to go to a pub on the Quayside. So yeah, we were wandering through the industrial estate where Gateshead College is now, and
when it was a building site.
Yeah, and we realised that Richard, well, I really fancied Richard, and I got the impression that he liked me as well. So I kind of tried to position myself in a way in which I might get a snog, and I didn't. He didn't snog me back. I was like, gosh, I've been shot down. But he really seemed to like me. But I was like, why is he not kissing me? So anyway, we kept going, went to the pub, we had a lovely time at the pub. He spilled a drink over me, but not on purpose. But I forgave him. And then we're walking back over the Millennium Bridge, and he asked me, would it ruin this evening if I asked you to kiss me? I was like, no, that would be so cool. But I tried to play it much cooler than that. And we had our first kiss. And then we started going out, and we were going out for about 9 months. And he sent me a text message one day in June, and he said, can you come and meet me where we had our first kiss? And I was like, oh, cool. And I had a suspicion, I had a hope about why he was asking to meet me. So I put on the outfit that we were wearing on our first date, and I took a taxi. Normally, that wasn't something that I would normally do at all, but I was like, I want to arrive cool and collected, so I took a taxi, and there he was standing, on the bridge where we had our first kiss, and I walked towards him. And literally, as I walked towards him, a shaft of sunlight appeared just at the spot where we had our first kiss. And I walked into it, and he walked towards me, and he asked me to marry him. And I said yes.
And this is why it's important to choose the location of your first kiss carefully. But then when she accepted the ring, she decided she had to test whether it was a good fit. So she put her hand over the railing and gave it a wiggle.
It fit really, really well.
And I was outraged. She thought that would be a good test.
But it was a really good fit, so it was fine. But yeah, I guess it's important to say, why didn't you kiss me when I angled myself nicely for a snog?
Well, because we were just next to a burger van, and if it went well, I didn't want to invite you back to meet me to propose to you outside. Well, I suppose the burger van wasn't there then; it was a building, but it wouldn't have been quite so cool, would it?
Yeah. So there we go. That's our story of the Tyne.
The Tyne's a big landmark, isn't it, within the region, and lots of things. You don't say, people don't always say they live on Tyneside in Newcastle. They say they live in Tyneside. So the Tyne gives the identity to the region.
Yeah.
So when I came up, I went to Durham for university, but I joined a Territorial Army unit which was in Newton Aycliffe, and they were part of the Tyne Electrical Engineers. So even though I was nowhere near the Tyne, my kind of military identity was associated with the Tyne because it was the descendant unit or the successor unit to searchlight batteries that were operated during the Second World War. So you'd have teams of volunteers on big searchlights looking for Luftwaffe planes as they came over to bomb Tyneside. So even though I hardly ever went to Newcastle from Durham or to the River Tyne, every Tuesday night and I think every Friday night I was off to the Tyne Electrical Engineers to do whatever it was I was doing. So it was always, so there is a kind of a funny little connection there, I think.
I didn't know that. Yeah, cool. So my dad was a transport engineer. He designed bridges, and I've always loved them, and I've always loved that idea of connecting people, about opening up opportunities, about taking you away on adventures and also bringing you back to home. So I think that seeing all of our beautiful bridges, and they've each got their different character, they've each got their different function and purpose, and I think the bridges over the Tyne are really special and important to a lot of people.
Yeah.
The Tyne Bridge, that was the blueprint for the Sydney Opera Bridge. I think that the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So yeah, the Tyne Bridge was the blueprint for that, and I think that it's really powerful, iconic, important design. And then there's the swing bridge, and that's got really interesting hydraulic engineering in it. And then we've got the beautiful Millennium Bridge, the blinking eye, and it's got such a special design, and it's so elegant, and there's just loads of beauty there.
It's funny how excited people are when they tilt the Millennium Bridge or they open the swing bridge. It's not. I think the Millennium Bridge, they do it quite regularly, don't they? But there's always a little crowd watching. It's more exciting than just a normal bridge that's just there.
Yeah.
Do you ever see a big boat come in, or a ship come in, and all the bridges open up? That's pretty cool.
I've lived in Wallsend all of my life, and I've visited various parts of the River Tyne, so I know it very well. Yes.
Can you tell me about any special connection with your family as with the Tyne?
Well, my uncle worked at the Shipyards right up until they stopped making ships. I've visited many areas, so I've visited Quayside, Fish Quay, St Peter's Basin, and there's a little place called Davy Bank. I don't know if you know that. I used to fish there with my dad when I was a teenager. So
it was definitely fun, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Why do you think the River Tyne is special to people? Like, do you have special memories in there?
I think the first time I was very young, about 6 or 7, and the tour ships came, and they came to, if I remember, it was St Peter's Basin. My dad took us, and you were allowed back then. There wasn't all this health and safety that you've got now. You were allowed to go on the boats. They would encourage the children to come onto the ships, and I remember that from being young, very young.
How was the River Tyne changed since you were born?
It was a lot cleaner. I remember it being quite dirty. I remember it being quite a bit smoggy down there. The water itself wasn't very clean. I don't really remember the bridges, but I know that we've now got extras. We now got obviously the Millennium Bridge. I was about 19 or 20 when that was made, and that was quite exciting to watch that process. That was a good 2 or 3 years of building and to see it all come together, which was quite exciting. And it was around about the time I was starting to go out and have a drink as well. So it would always be, oh, we'll go to Quayside for a drink, and then we can see how far they've got, you know, on the Millennium Bridge. I remember again being young, there was like stalls and markets. I don't know if they have them anymore, but my family used to take me to Quayside on a Sunday morning. And it would be all stalls and markets.
Oh, there's still, it is
Do
right
they
now.
still do that?
The Sunday markets, yeah.
I wasn't sure if they did that. And they did that a little bit different, similar, at the Fish Quay. But at the Fish Quay they had fairground rides. Yeah, I think they stopped that one. They stopped that one quite a while ago.
Well,
now.
the Sunday markets are still there because my parents usually go there often and get stuff there.
Well, that's good to know. Actually, I might visit after this. Now that I know that it's still on. But my fondest memory is fishing at Davy Bank with my dad, definitely. It's a bit of a naughty story. I went with my sister. I think I was about 14. She was about 7. And I sneaked off for a cigarette, which of course at 14 you're not really supposed to do. And I remember she grasped on me and she told my dad, and my dad threatened to throw me in the river. He did. He didn't throw us in the river, he threatened to throw me in the river.
Thank you very much for coming.
Yes, I do. I'm from Newcastle, so it's sort of always been a backdrop to my entire life. But my family, which have lived in Newcastle for hundreds and hundreds of years, if I go back maybe 100 years, slightly more than 100 years, they lived in Elsig, so very, very close to where we are now in Benwell. And my great-grandfather was a coal exporter. At that time there were a lot of mines in the northeast and even in Newcastle. At one point Jesmond was actually a mining area. So there was an awful lot of coal mined in this area, and my great-grandfather used to export the coal in ships down the Tyne and to Europe. There was a time in the 1980s, I think it was, when we had a nightclub on the Tyne, and I remember going to the nightclub a lot. That was cool. That was in a ship, and it was moored on the Gateshead side of the Tyne, just by the swing bridge, and that was the place to go partying, so I can remember that. Yeah, I do actually. One of them is about the pandemic and the river, because just before, in the years leading up to the pandemic, I was telling you that I worked in an office down by the Quayside, And every morning before I went to work, I would park my car at the office and then I would go and walk along the river. And I can remember it was about January the 6th, and I had been driving home from work, and there'd been an item on the news saying that there'd been a strange virus had been identified in China, and I don't know why it stayed in my mind, but it did. In those final few weeks, I would say between mid-January and March, when everything was just starting to get a little bit scary and a little bit crazy, I would spend longer walking down by the river. And actually, that was very calming. I remember that very, very well. And it stopped around about March the 23rd, I think it was, when businesses closed. I miss the river because at that point, I still very much in my mind associate walking along the river with that period of time. I was born in the 1960s. The Quayside really wasn't a place you spent any time as a young person. That sort of changed in the late 70s and 80s when a lot of bars and nightclubs opened up along the Quayside. And now, as I say, it's very much for families, so there's still the Quayside market still takes place. The first time, I can't remember the first time that I saw the Tyne. I can remember my earliest memories of it, which were crossing it on a bus, because as I said, I grew up in Quayside till I was about 10, and my friends and I would go to Newcastle on the bus on Saturday. And even to this day, if I'm away and returning, I see the Tyne Bridge, and the Tyne Bridge makes me feel that I'm sort of come home. At a time when there was a lot of trouble in the country, and a lot of trouble in Scotland, they had a king called Bonnie Prince Charlie, who was going to reclaim the throne of Scotland. He was in France, and one of my ancestors was a smuggler, and he had a boat, and he was quite brave, and he was quite fast with his boat, and he was involved in an attempt to rescue Bonnie Prince Charlie from, I think it was Lindisfarne Castle, and he left from the Tyne. And he was, I think he was unsuccessful. He does remain the only person to have ever captured the island, but I don't think he was successful in his mission. But so he left from the Tyne. I have relatives who are in the Royal Navy who sailed from the Tyne. I have, as I say, my great-grandfather had ships on the Tyne. So yes, it's been sort of pivotal, but in a background way. But yes, it's played a role in my family for a very long time. I believe that at one point the old Tyne Bridge, the very oldest Tyne Bridge, that at one point had shops on it and houses on it. So I believe that that's the case, although I hasten to add this is very long before I was born, very long before.
The boat comes in and dance to your daddy, sing to your mommy, dance to your daddy, to your...
My name is Oleg, and I'm originally from Ukraine.
What inspired you to do kayaking?
Well, I started kayaking back home. I live by very large river, the biggest river in Ukraine, which is Dnipro.
Oh.
So it was like, there was no other choice like doing some water sports, which I started. So we bought a kayak together with a few of my friends and then started exploring the river.
Oh, that's nice. Do you do any competitions with kayaking?
Generally, no. I like doing sport just for fun. I have enough competition at work, so I just relax when I do sports. Once I leave work, I do mountain biking, I do cycling along the river, I found lots of nice places around. I do rowing with the Gateshead Club, I do kayaking with the Pruda Club, so I'm into lots of activity, being on water and in nature.
So you're really a sporty person?
No, I wouldn't say it's sport, it's just like being outside, not sitting home.
Oh, okay.
Does the river remind you of home? Is that why you are doing so many water sports?
I think I generally like being on water. It is so calm and it's beautiful. You see the world differently from the water.
What do you think of the quality of the water of the River Tyne? And of course you've explored Gateshead and Newcastle.
As I said, I had this funny story where like decades ago, when someone fallen in the River Tyne, they would need to see a doctor immediately. But now I think it's alright because I fell in water from my kayak, I tested it and I'm still alive. So I think it's improved.
I believe that you also, like newly arrived Ukrainians, you have introduced them to the River Tyne.
I'm trying to bring these new people and show them best around this area.
Yeah. Well, I think your story is very interesting. Like how like you literally brought people here, like you made them feel at home, and after everything, like you made them like do rowing and stuff like that. And your love for water is very inspiring. Thank you.
Thanks.
Compared to the river, you said Dnipro?
Dnipro, yes.
Dnipro in Ukraine. Do they use the river for entertainment, for sports as well? And what are some of the things they do on that river that are not done on the River Tyne?
Yeah, I think it's all similar things. People do kayaking and fishing as here. I think maybe a bit different in Ukraine because water sports not as popular as here. Although our summers are very warm, so we can go and swim in the river, no problem.
Here it's a little bit cold.
I think rowing, kayaking probably a bit expensive sports in Ukraine. But still, people do it. And the interesting that in River Tyne you can see seals if you didn't know. And sometimes when we go on a boat, seals would just follow us.
Were they seals?
Yeah, they come from the sea to the river
into the river
for hunting or I don't know for what. Or
So
maybe they got lost.
So did they like just allow the seals to do that thing? No.
Sorry?
Did they like allow the seals to like do anything like that? Like they don't like.
Yeah, seals they're harmless, they're beautiful
okay.
creatures, and they're very inquisitive. So they would like follow. Like last time we were kayaking on the sea, there was lots of them just following boats. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Daddy to your mommy, say dance to your daddy, sing to your mommy, dance to your daddy, to your mommy.
We'd like to ask you a couple of questions. But first of all, what's your name?
My name is Suresh.
Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Peace.
Hello, hi.
Anyways, the question I want to ask you is: have you spent any time near the riverside or the quayside?
Yeah, I have. But quayside as well as more the quayside than the riverside. Yeah.
And what did you do there?
I went to the gallery, Baltic Art.
Oh.
I've been to some of the pubs along the way. What's it called? I can't remember the name. I've been over the bridge.
The Millennium Bridge. Yes.
Up there. Walked along there. Been to the market. Yeah, a few things.
And how did you find it? Was it nice?
It's a great place. Great place to be. I've seen a big change in the years I've been in Newcastle. When I first came to Newcastle, it was a dump.
Oh.
Now it's really good.
And
look at the camera now.
And is there any changes you still expect from the quayside to happen soon?
Well, changes. Well, you can always make some changes, but I don't know. More restaurants, more street food. Street food would be good.
Yeah.
And the market stalls are always good. You can improve them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.
My name is Mapley Godden. Oh, that's nice. My name is nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And I would like to ask you a couple of questions about your experience in the Newcastle quayside. So, have you spent any time near the riverside lately?
I have, yes.
Oh, how was it?
It was great. It was really nice, really busy.
And what did you do there?
So I've been for a few different things. I've been down to the market that's along the river at the weekends. I go there to walk my dog as well. And I've been to the theatre and to a couple of restaurants.
Oh, how did you find it?
I really love it. I think it's a nice bustling space with lots of people, and it's usually quite clean and nice along there, and there's lots of other people doing lots of different things.
That's nice. And are there any changes you like to see by the river soon?
I would like there to be maybe a bit of litter pickup, like first thing in the morning after we've been out around there. It can be a bit dirty, and my dog likes to eat all the rubbish. And I would like maybe there to be a few like different kinds of businesses. There's lots of bars and restaurants and things, but maybe some coffee shops.
Yeah.
Maybe some spaces that kind of a wider variety of people can enjoy.
Yeah.
So not just things serving alcohol.
Oh, thank you for your interview.
Great, thank you very much.
My name's Clare.
Okay. Have you spent any time by the riverside before, and what did you do there?
Yeah, I go quite often down the quayside. Go down often down the quayside on a Sunday. Me and my family go to the quayside market. Often go up and down. We'll go to the stalls. We'll go for coffee. There's lots of coffee shops. We get food. Go down there. I also go out with my friends to the restaurants down the quayside. So we do spend quite a bit of time down there. Yeah.
Would you say you really enjoy it all the time when you go there?
If the weather's good. Yeah, if it's sunny, I love it. If it's like winter and it's cold, not as much. But yeah, we often go down the quays. Like we don't live too far from there, so we can drive and park, have a wander along. And it's a nice thing to do at the weekend.
Are there any changes you'd like to see at the river or at the quayside in the future? Anything that would make you go there more?
Maybe a bit more parking. But I know it's good. Like public transport is quite good there. But no, I love the quayside. I think it's an amazing place to go, and it's really modern. So yeah, no, I really enjoy it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Learn more about the history of the North and the River Tyne, including the role that Michael people have played on the historic Quayside. We collected glass on Senior Beach.
Big banner over there, that's going to travel far and wide, but guess what, you get one that you can take with you far and wide as well. So I just want to present you one of these mini banners. One for you. Yes, that's great.
To be honest, I still can't believe that we've come to the end of the project and that we've hit all the milestones that we set, all the wishes that we had from it when we're actually just writing those ideas on paper have actually come into fruition, and in a much more extraordinary way than we would have imagined. I think the main thing for us was for the young people to increase their sense of belonging to the city, and to see how the city, which is now their home, is a place where they can also contribute and leave their mark on others. I think without a doubt they've done that with all the wonderful people we've worked with. The feedback from them has been extraordinary, and they've just blossomed. They've blossomed, we've had fun, and it's been a real pleasure to go through this journey with them. Just to see how the audiences have reacted to the young people's work has been fantastic to see. So I think it has really touched people, and as Caroline said, I think it will continue to do so.
Yes, they will remember this for years to come. They will tell it to their children. They will show the artwork to their children. The artwork will be permanently displayed somewhere, and also it's digitalized. It will be there for them to look and to refer to. So they definitely left a mark. And yes, as Stella said, it was very important that they increased their sense of belonging to the region, to the River Tyne, and its legacy around, because many of them, well, most of them live around the River Tyne. That's why we started it. And yes, and also they get certificate, an AQA skills certificate for investigative skills into research and heritage. So yeah, I think yes. we will hear more about this project for years to come, I think.
Well, when the Blaydon Races was on the 9th of June, 1862 on a summer's afternoon. The Countess from Balmer, she was handmade, and we went back on the streets on the motorway. Oh, we had to say
She was gunning.
Factory and on the day, just standing on to the railway bridge, the bus will flow off there. The lasses lost their crinolines and the beards that hide their faces. I got two black eyes and a broken nose, it's got the Blaydon Races. Oh,